Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org. Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway. Shop Safeway's brands and get high-quality essentials for low prices. From Signature Select, Lucerne, and O Organics, you can save more on your favorites. Get started at Safeway.com or in the Safeway app.
Hey everyone, happy Monday. We have a pretty big show for you today, so we're just gonna jump right in. I'm Arlo Perez Esquivel.
And I'm Bazi Kanani. Coming up, the Trump administration is trying to force Colorado to keep its coal plants open.
We believe that the Clean Air Act does not give anybody the authority to shut down coal generation plants.
Then, Denver's mayor hopes to ask voters for almost $1 billion in bonds, but it's already drawing pushback.
Some members say it was rushed, some say it hasn't been transparent.
Plus, how public media plans to stay on the air without federal funds.
And those tunnels you get stuck on at I-70, have you ever considered their names?
He didn't live to see the completion of any tunnel through the Continental Divide, but the new eastbound tunnel was named after him.
It's Monday, July 21st. Here's the news in Colorado today.
Colorado has long planned to move away from coal, but the Trump administration doesn't think Colorado can or should be able to do that. That was made clear in a draft EPA decision released last week, and it has environmental groups worried the White House is ready to derail Colorado's climate plans. CPR's Sam Brash broke the story. Sam, will you set the stage here for us? Colorado still relies, at least at this time, on coal-fired power plants to generate electricity, right?
It does, but the state is rapidly shifting to cleaner energy sources. So right now there are 6 coal-fired power plants operating in Colorado. Every single one of them is set to either retire or convert to natural gas by 2031, so just less than 6 years from now. Colorado is counting on those closures to meet its climate targets, and getting utilities to agree to that schedule took years of rulemaking and negotiations.
All that work, and now this, the EPA draft decision rejecting pieces of Colorado's plan to clean up its air quality. Can you tell us more about that? And how does it fit into the debate over coal?
The federal government basically requires states to maintain clear air quality above protected areas like Rocky Mountain National Park, like federally designated wilderness areas. Coal-fired power plants are a major pollution source impacting those places. And so these plans are a way for the state to go to the EPA and basically say, will you sign off on this and confirm that it has the full support of the federal government? This preliminary decision shows the Trump administration absolutely does not agree with Colorado's plans.
And why is that?
So I spoke with EPA Regional Administrator Cyrus Western. He says Colorado is forcing utilities to close coal-fired power plants earlier than planned.
And to recoup their investment, they're going to have to pass that along to the consumer. And so this is a trend that we've been seeing for decades. And President Trump and Administrator Zeldin have made it very clear that they intend to do everything within their power to reverse that trend.
And by reversing that trend, Western says they're going to stop energy bills from going up more than they need to and make the grid more reliable. And this is what's also really important. Western also says that what Colorado is trying to do is illegal, that no government entity can force these coal plants into early retirement.
We believe that the Clean Air Act does not give anybody the authority to shut down coal generation plants against the owner's will.
In other words, Colorado just can't force a utility to shut down a coal plant, even though they're a leading source of greenhouse gas emissions and really dangerous air and water pollution.
So how is Colorado likely to respond to this? Are state leaders likely to just give up on plans to close coal plants?
Absolutely not. Look, these closures are required by state clean energy standards. Utilities have agreed to close them in really hard-fought negotiations with state regulators. So those state policies are going to remain in place. But what this decision signals is that the federal government is going to do whatever it can to undermine Colorado's climate plans.
You spoke with climate advocates. How are they reacting to this decision?
They are shocked and furious. Jeremy Nichols is a senior climate advocate with the Center for Biological Diversity, and he says the federal government has never made this kind of argument before.
And, what it reflects is just we have zealots. There's, coal industry zealots who are running the EPA right now. This is not grounded in any, legitimate rationale. This is just doing everything possible to try to prop up the coal industry.
In the process, Nichols says the Trump administration is willing to strip Colorado and other states of their basic authority to protect air quality.
So again, the other side of this, the EPA says closing these coal plants would increase energy bills for consumers and put the power grid at risk. Is that so? Is closing coal plants possibly bad for consumers?
It's complicated. To close these power plants, ratepayers essentially have to cover the debt the utilities took out to build these plants. We basically need to help them pay off their mortgages early, so to speak. And we have to pay for the cost of new wind, solar, or gas plants to replace that lost generation. State regulators have reviewed those plans, and they've concluded that it wouldn't make the grid any less reliable. And there's also big benefits from closing coal power plants. We get cleaner air in the short term, and in the long term, we stop paying for all the coal necessary to generate electricity. That means potentially lower costs because the sun and the wind are free.
CPR climate reporter Sam Brash, thank you.
Thank you.
This may be another tough year to ask voters in Colorado for money, given economic uncertainty. And the city of Denver is one of many in Colorado that faces a major budget deficit. Denver plans to lay off employees and reduce city services. Still, Denver's mayor is hoping to fund nearly $1 billion in new projects and capital improvements with voter approval in this fall's election. Denverite reporter Paolo Shalsita joins us now to explain. Paolo, before voters can consider this bond package, Mayor Mike Johnston first has to get city council to agree. And, it sounds like that's been tough.
It definitely has. Parts of city council have been very vocal about their concerns. Some members say it was rushed. Some say it hasn't been transparent. When the bond package was unveiled earlier this month, council had more complaints. They said the bond neglected many of the city's most diverse neighborhoods while prioritizing pet projects like the proposed Park Hill Park, which could receive $70 million to build out.
$70 million for Park Hill Park. What else is in the bond package? Well, how does the mayor want to spend the money?
About half of the nearly $1 billion would go towards transportation infrastructure, basically making existing roads safer. Despite that, transportation advocates say the bond doesn't fund any big-picture projects to get people out of cars and shift towards multimodal travel. Two major projects that aren't transportation-related are that Park Hill Park I mentioned and a new first responder safety training center, where firefighters, police, and sheriff's recruits will be able to train. That one will cost $75 million.
Denver voters have almost always approved bond measures. Last fall, though, they did reject a big ask from the mayor. That was to raise sales taxes by 0.5% to fund affordable housing projects. So as they consider this new ask, they might be thinking about their own finances. Will it raise taxes?
The mayor's office says this won't raise taxes, just extend a property tax that's due to expire. The mayor's office and some city officials argue the chance of an economic recession is exactly why they should strike while the iron is hot, and that investing in projects now will be cheaper than investing down the line. But there's another part of the finances that's important to note here. Denver is facing a $250 million budget deficit over the next 2 years, which will cause layoffs. If this bond is pushed through, some of the projects proposed will inevitably need staffing, and I'm waiting to see how the city will balance that while reducing its workforce.
Mayor Johnston just completed his second year as mayor, so he's about halfway through his term. If this bond measure failed, what would be at stake for him in terms of other priorities or even just his standing as mayor?
Well, this bond touches on a number of the mayor's goals. The bond could build better parks, a new recreation center, safer streets, and maintain the city's cultural institutions. If voters or even city council rejects his vision for the bond, it would be another rejection of a big ballot issue pushed forward by the mayor. It also poses a big question that I think the mayor will have to address. If he can't get Denverites to fund his vision for Denver, How can he achieve that without either the explicit democratic permission of voters or without a treasure chest of cash?
We know you'll continue to follow this. Thanks, Paolo.
Of course.
You probably won't notice a difference right away, but public media outlets across Colorado say the loss of federal funding that Congress finalized last week will be evident. Like in Alamosa, where Gerald Rodriguez runs the radio station KRZA.
The world we live in these days, you can't raise $200,000 in funds in a little tiny rural area that's, like our area is pretty impoverished. We're like one of the most poor counties in Colorado, I think. And so, people don't have a lot of money to donate hundreds of dollars every time. Our donations are more like $20 at a time, $50 here, things like that. And so that's who it's going to really affect.
His station will lose at least 40% of its budget. The money gets cut off in October. Overall, Congress pulled back more than $1 billion that had been allocated for public radio and television. Republicans say it's about being more responsible with the federal budget. The vast majority of the money that is being cut was designated to go to local stations, like the one that makes this podcast.
That's like, 6%. Anyone can tighten their belt by 6%. The thing is, nonprofits operate on very narrow margins.
Stuart Vanderwilt is the president of Colorado Public Radio, Denverite, and KRCC. He says he's committed to helping stations across the state work together, whether they're in Alamosa, the Four Corners area, or somewhere else. They have some big problems to figure out. The federal agency that Congress just defunded has historically paid for the infrastructure to get national shows and negotiated music rights for the public radio systems to use on air. Here's Rocky Mountain PBS CEO Amanda Mountain talking about the music rights.
Is how are we going to solve for this very big problem that threatens the future of cultural institutions like Kuvo Jazz?
Public media leaders across the state say they are still figuring out how to adapt to the loss of federal funds, and bigger outlets promise to help prop up smaller stations that are now at risk of closing.
Whatever happens with our funding, we will try to keep answering your curiosities, like this one. You've probably driven through the Eisenhower-Johnson Memorial Tunnels on I-70 near Silverthorne. But do you know which leaders the tunnels are named after? If you guessed 2 presidents, you'd be wrong. CPR's Ryan Warner has the correct answer in this week's Colorado Wonders. Ryan, I admit I did get this one at least partially wrong.
Bozzy, I got to say, you're not alone. When most people mention the Eisenhower, they're referring, in fact, to 2 side-by-side tunnels. Now, you're right to assume the Eisenhower westbound through the Continental Divide is named for this man.
Those who have freedom will understand also its heavy responsibility.
Our 34th U.S. President, Dwight D. Eisenhower. Colorado's Eisenhower Tunnel opened in 1973, at the time the highest vehicular tunnel in the world. Another tunnel opened beside it for eastbound traffic. That newer tunnel was named for Johnson.
But not President Johnson, as in LBJ.
No, not Lyndon Baines, as many assume.
So then which Johnson is the tunnel named after?
Well, the easterly one is named after a Colorado politician.
There were some champions for the tunnel, and one of them was Governor Edwin Johnson, who had been a governor in the 30s.
This is Lisa Schock, senior historian at the Colorado Department of Transportation.
And then he was a senator for 20 years and then came back and was a governor in the 50s. And he was really a champion of transportation and industry and the ski industry and tourism. And he really wanted there to be a tunnel that connected the state.
That was an era of big interstate projects.
Yes. Now, Edwin Johnson died in 1970, so he didn't live to see the completion of any tunnel through the Continental Divide. But nearly a decade after his death, indeed, the new eastbound tunnel was named after him. Here's historian Derek Everett on Lost Highways, a podcast from History Colorado.
Ed Johnson was a phenomenally complicated figure, and it's always important to remember Ed Johnson was probably the most successful politician in Colorado's history.
When he died, people came up to his coffin in the Capitol to shake his hand.
The historian there described him as both successful and complicated. So what about that complicated part? What is it about Ed Johnson's legacy that's mixed?
Well, DU law professor Tom Romero says in Lost Highways that Johnson fought to keep people out of Colorado, certain people.
He talks about aliens and indigenous persons that are invading the state. That's why it was necessary for him to declare martial law. He deploys 50 National Guardsmen to the southern boundary.
We have a link to that episode of Lost Highways in the show notes. Really worth a listen. In any case, the next time you travel that eastbound tunnel, you know it was actually named after Edwin, not Lyndon.
I'm definitely bringing up that bit of trivia the next time I make that drive. Thanks, Ryan.
You're welcome, Bozzy.
Reporting for today's show came from CPR's Tom Hess and Caitlin Kim. Fun fact, this is our 100th episode. If you've been listening to us from the beginning, thank you. And if you're new here, welcome. I'm Arlo Perez Esquivel.
And I'm Bozzy Kanani. This is CPR News.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway. Shop Safeway's brands and get high-quality essentials for low prices. From Signature Select, Lucerne, and O Organics, you can save more on your favorites. Get started at Safeway.com or in the Safeway app. Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.